very much for having us here this afternoon. I'm Michelle Lloyd, and this is my colleague Josie Harrison. We work for an independent market research company called Solutions. So we're here today to share legal professionals' experiences of the barriers they have faced getting into, getting on within, and even staying within the legal profession. So the Legal Services Board have commissioned this qualitative research to gather these lived experiences of counter-inclusive practices and the impact these counter-inclusive practices have on legal professionals. The aim is that it will build a body of evidence to inform future research and policy activity for the LSB and will be published to inform others in the profession. So the final sample will include around 30 individuals, and to date we've interviewed about a third of the sample, from a range of settings, not solely solicitors and barristers, from all career stages, from early through to later career, and with a range of protected characteristics, including age, gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation, and health conditions, along with those with and without caring responsibilities, and from a range of socio-economic backgrounds. Now, several of the individuals we've spoken to have multiple protected characteristics, which suggests that the lens of intersectionality is going to be very important within our final analysis. But today we're sharing a few emerging findings based on the sample to date, and also to highlight that we are focusing on recent experiences in the last 3 years. So we've used this definition of counter-inclusive practices, which is about conduct which prevents people from getting into or on within the legal profession. The early part of our discussions with our participants covers their perceptions of what inclusion and counter-inclusive practices mean within the legal profession. And what they've been describing to us is that inclusion is both a feeling as well as specific behaviours and practices that work to make everyone feel part of the profession. We've heard a wide range of counter-inclusive practices from participants that fall into one or more of these types. Some of the practices have been seen to be driven by an individual's conduct and behaviours, while others may experience a practice from an individual, but they will then ascribe that to workplace culture. And at the same time, practices may also be driven by or supported by systems and policies in place within an organisation or by the physical workspace.
Around the needs of health conditions and disabilities not being appreciated within the workplace. For example, the need to take frequent breaks or not being able to take part in multiple back-to-back video calls, as one participant with a health condition explained. One example was taking breaks away from my desk were escalated, rather than being offered support or asking why I had been away from my desk by the supervising partner. Other experiences are on the impact of the physical space on wheelchair users or the visually impaired. For example, when an office isn't fully accessible, this makes it harder for the individual to participate and integrate fully with all staff on a social as well as a work level. And attention in particular in our interviews to date has been drawn to non-inclusive recruitment practices. So this includes difficulties in securing training contracts if you're coming from a non-traditional route, such as being a career changer, from not having gone to a specific university or not having the traditional qualifications. So the practices which evidence this include not being able to sufficiently showcase your relevant work experience on application forms. We've also heard from individuals who've been told directly by recruitment agents that they're not putting your CV forwards due to your career break or your educational background or your health condition. There have also been practices highlighted at interview stage, as one participant told us, "I've told people in interviews before that I am dyslexic and seen their eyes glaze over, like they decide there and then it isn't worth talking to me anymore." Several examples have been shared around difficulty with applications for flexible working or for reasonable adjustments. For example, being refused flexible or part-time working and being told this is due to others with children working full-time, or being refused reasonable adjustments as this would open floodgates, or would mean more senior staff having to move desks or be seen to be inconvenienced.
So, as we've just heard, while some practices are much more overt and obvious, sitting alongside these are everyday actions which are sort of pervasive, unconscious even, but have a significant impact on the individual. As one of our LGBTQ+ participants shared, I don't think it's the egregious examples. I think everyone would agree that they are, to be frowned upon. It's not hitting those smaller microaggression, counter-inclusive things, which I think is where the attention needs to be given.
So some examples shared with us include an assumption that someone without children in the home would be more prepared to work through the festive season, or walking into a room and assuming that an ethnic minority female was a client and not a legal professional. Overhearing a staff member sharing a story about how embarrassed they were that somebody thought that they were gay. And senior male partners invited male juniors to social events and sporting activities outside of workplace, but not their female counterparts. As one female participant talked us through their experience of this, they talked about what happened as a result. That turned into him being directly invited to go to clients by partners to cover for them. I never got those invitations, and he always did. I'm quite aware it wasn't because of productivity or efficiency or intelligence or competency. It was purely because I hadn't established that connection, because I hadn't had a chance to. I wasn't invited to these little bonding exercises outside of work time.
But perhaps most telling has been the impact of their experiences and how the counter-inclusive practices experience have impacted on them personally, on them professionally, but also on their feelings towards their workplace and the profession more broadly. They've shared with us how these practices have impacted on their well-being, their productivity at work, their career development, but also a concern that it impacts on their ability to deliver the best possible outcomes for their clients by feeling on the back foot.
A participant with dyslexia told us that after their request to move desks was refused, they said, "I was devastated. I was thinking it was a simple request that would make me more productive and able to get on with my work better. It made me sad. I was wondering why people aren't listening to me. That's the most frustrating thing. It doesn't cost anything to move seats." Another female participant from an ethnic minority group talked us through how it felt when she experienced different treatment to colleagues. "It started to impact me. At first I thought it was me, so I thought I needed to do more. So I was staying later and later, doing more and more work. It was very, very disheartening. And then eventually you think, if you speak up now, having had let everything happen, I've sort of lost." And another female from an ethnic minority group shared the impact on them of counter-inclusive practices by senior colleagues. "What's the point of being a lawyer? It just feels that unless something changes, I'm going to experience this all the time. And either I develop a thick enough skin to deal with it, but what do I say to my clients? Oh, you might not have the desired outcome because of who I am, and that's going to impact on the type of work I get as well."
So alongside these more personal impacts, they also shared how these impacts have not only impacted on recruitment, but also on their intention to stay, and reflect negatively on the workplace as a whole, and how well they feel the profession is serving its clients.
So participants shared these impacts in their own words. An LGBT participant told us after experiencing counter-inclusive practice from a senior colleague, "It makes me question that person's judgment. I really judge you being in charge here. And it also makes you question the effectiveness of the policies. Are they actually taking effect the way that some people would hope they are?" While an ethnic minority participant told us their thoughts on wider impacts, "It holds the profession back. I've seen myself how clients like having someone who they can identify with."
But we're also asking participants to reflect on positive examples of inclusive behaviours and practices within the profession and what they see as potential ways forward to address the issues raised. So they've been sharing their thoughts about ways the profession can move forwards in terms of changing mindsets, to being more open and more inquiring in workplace conversations. So this has included suggestions around expanding workplace education to drive more understanding of protected characteristics and unconscious bias, practical ideas such as reverse mentoring, having visible initiatives including professionals across the age and career spectrum, listening more closely to the needs people have and being open to different ways of working and reasonable adjustments. So the introduction of harder policies and approaches have also been suggested. So, for example, the collation and publication of data and statistics on diversity and inclusion within the profession, including replicating the gender pay gap reporting for other protected characteristics. And also the re-examination of recruitment criteria and practices to ensure a more inclusive and diverse workforce at every level.
To finish, we wanted to share and sort of highlight three of the things that have stood out to us, I guess as outsiders, as people have talked about that word before, but sort of the three things to take away from this. So the first would be that little things matter, or the so-called little things matter. The impact of everyday comments has come through in all of the interviews we've done to date, and they can have such a big impact on an individual's experience at work, on their day-to-day life. And what's been clear is that in many of these cases that can be easily solved with greater openness to ask questions of each other and to be all right with getting things wrong and just having those kind of difficult and uncomfortable conversations. The second is that there's a real commercial impetus to inclusivity. So counter-inclusive practices have not only had a personal and emotional impact, but they have influenced how productively and effectively an individual is able to work. And the final thought from us was that there's a need to review the recruitment practices. As we've said, that has come through in many interviews that we have done. And so notably, we've heard from participants about their challenges right at that start of their legal career, that there are significant barriers to getting into the profession for people who don't feel they fit the typical mould of a legal recruit. We're really looking forward to continuing with this project. Hopefully we've shared some of the emerging findings, and you can see that the pictures are building. And we'll publish final outputs by the end of this year. We are incredibly grateful to the openness and the interest that people have shown in participating in the research today and their desire that they have articulated to us to be part of creating change. We are still looking for people and are keen to hear from people who want to take part in the research. So please contact us. We have a form that can be filled out. It's anonymous if you want to express interest in taking part. And we just want to say a big thank you for having us as part of your event today.